Hello everyone. Good to see you all again. Let me just go to my channel so I can check on the chat. Alright, who do we got? We got Tyler, we got SS Normandy, Scott, who else? Dangerous Brian, Granny Gaming, Kevin Stewart. Awesome. Good to see you all here. So, we're back to kind of a normal tea time here because I finally was able to get some ingredients to get other stuff together. Can everybody hear me fine? Can they see me fine? I just want to make sure because I have this weird feeling like my microphone might be muted or something isn't working. This has gone way too smoothly today. I actually started at 4 o'clock and I actually have everything ready to go. That's weird. Usually I have all kinds of problems before I start these things. SS Normandy, YouTube is giving you ads because I put ads on these things. But you should be able to skip them. At least some of them. Hey Mark, how's it going? Hey Brocky, it's been a while since I've seen you. Wolf Lord, hello. Vivid Racer, what's going on? Boop GT says hi. Hello everybody. Mark says all perfect today, thank you. That's good. SS Normandy says, is Mr. Squeaky okay? Yes, I oiled up Mr. Squeaky before starting. So hopefully no noise. I don't think we will. I have to, every time I use this particular locomotive, I have to oil it up before the show because it will just squeak like crazy. And it can go all day like this, completely silent. But as soon as it sits for a few hours, just sitting, and I start it up again, it'll get squeaky again. It's like never ending. It's like I kind of like look at it, I'm like, where does all this stuff go when I apply it to the axles? Like, where does it go? But it's working really well. So, CA Fan 24 says, hi Alex, you're the first person to actually read my comment. Really? Oh, that's sad. People should be reading your comments all the time. At least I try to get to everybody's comment on here. Hey Mike, how's it going? Oh, Brock's been busy with school. Okay, that's okay. School is important. Max says, tomorrow is my first day at high school. I should probably go to bed, not watch vids about ocean liners. You should get your sleep for high school. First day of high school is always awkward for everybody. So don't worry in case if you are worried. A lot of people are worried about how they're going to appear in front of new people and stuff. And everybody going to high school on their first day is absolutely petrified. So don't worry. Scott says, do you think flying jet boats are possible? I mean, in a way. I mean, they've already created it. I forget what they call it, but there's a boat. Well, there's actually two different types of boats. One boat has these fins that go vertically down into the water, and when you move the boat at really high speed, it lifts the whole boat out of the water, aside from the little fins that are touching the water. I forget what those are called. And then there's another kind of boat that they actually call a flying boat, and it's like a hover boat or something, and air pressure keeps it up just above the surface of the water, and high pressure fans at the back of the boat push it forward. So yeah, they've already kind of invented flying boats if you think about it. Vivid Racer says, what train derailed that one time? I don't remember what you mean. Oh, Brocky learned Bohemian Rhapsody solo on guitar. Wow. Octarian says, hey Alex, have you seen What If Britannic Never Sank by Oceanliner Designs? I have not seen that particular video. I'm not very much a fan of Britannic. Boop GT says, have you been on a steam train? Yes, actually, I have. I've been on quite a few in my life. I mean, first thing that comes to mind is Disneyland Railroad. I've been on Disneyland Railroad many times in my life. But I've also been on other steam trains. I've been on steam trains that weren't active, and I've been on steam trains that were active. Oh, I needed some of that water. Okay. Just gotta pour out half of the hot tap water, and then we're gonna refill the rest with some boiling water to get these vessels preheated. They are authentic china from Cunard ships like Queen Mary, Queen Elizabeth, Sylvania, Caronia, that kind of thing. And because they're real bone china, they do need to come up in temperature before we can just pour straight boiling water into it. So we'll let that kind of cookie crumb. Let that kind of heat up for a bit. So, let's see. Tyler says, got to sail on Queen Mary 2 while she was still in service. Once she's retired, bye, and that was all she wrote. I don't think Queen Mary 2 will retire for quite a while. Max says, thing is, I will be with people I've never seen in my life, which is making me nervous. Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You know, high school is really nerve-wracking, especially on the first day. You know, my first year of high school, I had moved from one city to another. So nobody from my previous school was going to the school I was at. So I most certainly was completely all on my own. And I think what got me through it was because I was just a weird kid, you know? Like, I was just a weird kid. So I was not particularly outgoing or bubbly, but I think that's what drew me to creating friends almost from day one of high school. And so I think I don't know how, but I got into conversations with all kinds of people that first day. And from then on, we formed kind of like a little group. It was kind of cool. You never know what'll happen. Daniel says, hey, Alex, what if there is an ocean liner with a secret? If there is already a bad storm that an ocean liner can't go through, the ship can go underwater like a submarine. I think they've kind of went with that idea with some ocean liners. Some were just designed so that way the superstructure could pretty much just be immersed in water for a little while, but not fully underwater. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Wolflord says, do you build ship models? I can't technically say yes, but I have in the past. I've built... the only one I have is my RMS Titanic, which is slowly, you know, just falling into decay in the corner of my room there. I built it in 2012, so 10 years ago. And I need to refurbish it. I've been slowly buying supplies to refurbish it because I love that model. I don't want to get rid of it. So... and my friend Eric, he keeps going, give me the model. I'm like, I'm not going to give you this model. I like spent months making this model. So, but yeah, I'm going to eventually refurbish it. But yes, I have built models of ships before, but I wouldn't call myself a ship model builder because it's been 10 years since the last one. So, but I could see myself buying more model kits depending on a ship I really want to own, you know, like Queen Mary. Hoverboat. Yes, that's right, Kevin. It was a hoverboat. Max says, is there any encounters of ships' boilers exploding? Oh, yeah. There's plenty of stories of ships' boilers exploding. I mean, the first one that comes to mind is the SS Norway, which was the SS France. The SS Norway, if I recall correctly, had to be permanently retired because of a boiler explosion. And then there was also the QE2. I want to say in the 1980s, one of the boilers exploded, and it was completely out of commission for a while. So those are the two stories that come to my mind first. But, oh yeah, there's plenty of instances of boilers exploding on a ship. Sir Canister says, hi, Alex, is there any recent update on Queen Mary? No, unfortunately, there isn't. Vivid Racer says, have you ever been on a cruise? No, and I don't really plan to be. I'm not a cruise person. Gray Starline says, hello, Alex. Hello, Gray Starline. Captain Happy says, hi, Alex. There's a heat wave in SoCal this weekend. Thunderstorms on Catalina Island this morning. Oh, wow. Thunderstorms. Wow. You have to... Oh, Tyler says you meant to say you have to sail on Queen Mary 2 while she's still in service. Oh, yeah. That's especially how I feel as well. I have this deep fear that I won't be able to sail aboard that ship in time, you know? And it's weird because she's probably got another 20 years in her. But you just never know. I mean, look at what happened when COVID happened. All these... Everything changed. Life changed. I know my life changed. And so it's just kind of like, you know, it's like when I was on the original Queen Mary, I took for granted that the ship would always be open, would always be there. And then there was a time when, you know, everybody feared that the Queen Mary was going to be scrapped. There was just a brief period of time where it really did seem like that would happen. So I've always felt like, boy, I gotta take a voyage aboard the Queen Mary 2 before anything happens. 4:18, so 5 minutes on that. I'm gonna go ahead and dump some of that out. Yeah, just a little bit. Hopefully I left enough water in there for... Because sometimes it takes me forever to drink the tea, so I like to reheat the tea. There. Alright. And so today, folks, I didn't get... So I have the McVitie's in my fridge, and if you saw my last live stream from Wednesday, the McVitie's chocolate-covered digestives, I ordered like 4 packs of them, and they arrived on a hot day, and they left it on my porch, and I didn't get the notification till like an hour later that it was actually on my porch, and I was home at the time. And so I broke open the package of McVitie's, and they were just concreted together. The chocolate had just made them a solid brick. And I tried breaking them apart, you know, and it just doesn't work. So no McVitie's today. I am going to eat them, but just not on stream because I had to get like chunks of cookie, and it's just weird. Anyway, so these are the Scottish shortbread that I make here from scratch. And I made these last night, actually. So I have like a whole batch that'll last me like a week. More than a week, actually. I think they last me 2 weeks. They should only last me 1 week. But I stretch it out, and I really shouldn't, because I don't think they're meant for lasting 2 weeks. But, and then this is the English cucumber sandwiches. So everyone knows that I make these on occasion. They're made with dill, cream cheese, mayonnaise, pinch of garlic powder, pinch of salt, and of course slices of cucumber. Of course, I slice them in planks to make it easier to cut the sandwiches. But yeah, so we do kind of have a British tea time going here. For those that are new to the tea times, why this is called a Cunard afternoon tea is because this whole set of china that I have, all this stuff here, came from ships like Queen Mary, Queen Elizabeth, these two ships here. And the newest piece I have is from 1967. The oldest piece I have is from 1952. And I didn't get them all at once. It took me a while to collect all the individual pieces. I learned something new yesterday. Was it yesterday or the day before? I forget. My friend Steve was talking to me about this stuff. And he informed me that, you see, I often call this a hot water jug, right? Because that is, when I bought this, all of them were called this. This over here, it was very specifically called the creamer. It's less than half the size. But my friend Steve tells me this is also a creamer. It's meant for like a large table of people. So this in itself is also a creamer. And then this one that I often call a waste dish, it looks just like the sugar bowl, the miniature sugar bowl. The sugar bowl is square shaped, so is the waste dish, as I was calling it. Again, I called it that because that is what people have been calling it on eBay. But he informed me that this is also a large sugar bowl. So, again, for a large table of people. So that makes sense. And then there's only one piece of this tea set that I do not own, which is, you've seen my teapot. Here's another one, same size. Apparently, if there was a large table, they had a much larger teapot for that. I've never been able to find it. I've been looking on eBay. I have notifications on eBay set up in case someone starts selling something that is Cunard or Queen Mary. But I've never once seen someone put one of the large teapots up for sale. I would love to have one because occasionally I do have tea with, you know, my sister and my brother-in-law, and so it'd be nice to be able to like invite them over and, you know, and stuff. So, but oh, is it already time for tea? Wow. That can't be right, can it? Yeah, it is right. That is time for tea. I did not even... Oh, that's hot. Okay. I like my tea extra strong, so... Oh, today's tea, by the way, is Earl Grey. So this is it here. I try to make it so there's no glare on the screen, but yeah, this is Twining's Earl Grey. Okay. Yeah, I try to like let it brew for the maximum time because I just, for some reason, I like my teas really dark and strong. So I'm gonna go ahead and cool. Wow. All right. So now with everything properly warmed up and the tea brewed, I will serve it. Oh, that's really hot. I am burning my fingers. Eee. Okay. Sorry. It's just... I got some tea everywhere. Sometimes it's the teapot is like so white on the inside that I can't actually see where the water line is, and so sometimes I spill a lot of water because I can't tell where the water is. All right, put that there. Yeah. Daniel says, "Hey Alex, have you ever been inside the cab of a steam locomotive and blew the whistle on it?" Yes, in fact I have. So I've been inside the cab of the Disneyland trains, three different trains. And then at one point the trains were on display in Fullerton, the city of Fullerton, and I got to blow the whistle on it. And then I was also at a train museum where I got to blow a whistle once on a steam train. So yeah, I've been inside the cab of a locomotive of a steam train. Alright, so... Wolf Lord says, where did you get the Cunard poster? So this particular poster, I bought it on eBay. It's a reproduction. It's a miniature reproduction. So the actual one would have been twice as big as this. Yeah, it's a miniature reproduction. I really like it. I framed it myself, because you only buy the poster. But it's beautiful. It depicts the Queen Mary on the top at New York, and then the Queen Elizabeth in Southampton. So, those are my two favorite ships, Queen Mary, Queen Elizabeth. But of course, the Queen Mary is my most favorite ship of all time. I think she's more beautiful than Queen Elizabeth, in my opinion. Okay. Demi-toss spoons. It's just weird to think, like, this is a set of china that has been around for more than 50 years. People used this stuff on the ships. They were drinking from it. They were eating from it. You know, this stuff has history to it. So I'm always aware of that every time I do these tea time live streams. It makes me feel more like I'm in the past and I'm enjoying, you know, a bit of that past. It's really kind of a magical feeling. All right. K4RNA says, hey Alex, I can't post a chat from my phone. Says I have to wait 20 minutes. I think that probably means you aren't logged into the same account. Because on my live chat, only people who are subscribed to my channel can make a chat, and they have to be subscribed for 20 minutes in order to do it. I do that so that way, because there's a lot of like weird ads and stuff, and they post all kinds of creepy stuff and, you know, things like that. So it's probably that you're not logged into the same account on your phone. Max says, I hope RMS Queen Mary won't have the same outcome as SS United States being left abandoned. I don't think so. She's far too valuable right now to be left abandoned. And I know that sounds really backwards. I know a lot of people are like, what? That's impossible. She makes a lot of money for the city of Long Beach. And that's something that the press has not wanted to print in the papers, because doom and gloom sounds a lot more interesting to sell than happy endings. So the Queen Mary makes a lot of money for the county of Los Angeles and for the city of Long Beach. They're not going to want to let it fall into complete disrepair and abandon it. And the reason why is just because they'd have to say goodbye to all that money and hello to all new debts. The debts of getting rid of the ship. So that's not going to happen. It would just cost too much money to let her fall into complete disrepair. Even right now, the city is paying out of pocket to refurbish the ship. That's something they never wanted to do. They've always tried to bring in other companies to lease the ship, and those companies had the responsibility of taking care of the ship. Of course, because they're private companies, they can claim all sorts of tragedies and woes and say, oh, well, we can't take care of the ship. But to save Long Beach, you know, as we say in the United States, the buck stops with them, which means that there's no one else they can turn to and say, here, take care of the ship. The buck stops at Long Beach, so they're the ones taking care of the ship now. Mark says, I'm joining you with dark chocolate McVitie's here. I feel guilty as they were on special, $2 a packet. Again here in Oz. Haha, your shortbread looks awesome. Thank you. Yeah, the dark chocolate McVitie's, a package of it here costs about $7 American US dollars. So yeah, it's quite expensive here. And then, like I said, mine arrived completely melted together and they could not be separated. Like it's like chipping away at ice. It just breaks apart in whatever size blocks. So it's just unfortunate. Like it's edible and I'll eat it, you know, outside the live streams, but I don't want to look like some like monster with like chunks of stuff just toppled over on my plate, you know. Let's see. SS Normandy says, Alex, you are so talented. Thank you. No, Vivid Racer, I haven't heard of that ship. Yes, Grey Starline, I remember that ship that you were building. Yes, Daniel, I've heard of the Queen Mary horror film that they're making right now. Yeah, you're right. The rich history of the ship will continue to be overshadowed. For those that don't know, they're currently in the post-production phase of making a new Hollywood movie. I don't know that it'll be a blockbuster per se, but it might be like a B movie, really. But basically, it's a movie where they take all of the most famous ghost stories that exist on the Queen Mary right now, and they're going to like weave it into a story of like three different stories that are interconnected. It's going to be 100% fiction. 100%. I mean, even the ghost stories on the Queen Mary, the most famous ones are pretty much fictionalized. You know, some might be based off of a tiny sliver of truth, but it's mostly overblown into fiction. So the movie will take that fiction and blow it up in an even bigger fiction. And it's unfortunate because it's like I've been saying for years, I think the Queen Mary's history is way more interesting than the ghost stories. Like, there are some amazing stories that happen on the Queen Mary. You know, like Ralph Rushton told a story where one time they were caught up in a storm, and this one ship had was putting out distress signals. A crew member on some freight vessel had gotten injured when the ship rolled. So the Queen Mary came to the rescue. And Ralph Rushton, he was generally a steward, but he was asked to help with rescuing this person from the other ship. So they took one of Queen Mary's accident boats, which is the forward lifeboats at the very bow of the ship, or forward superstructure of the ship, I should say. They took one of the accident boats out. I think it was accident boat number 2. And then they drove out on these huge swells. They drove out on these huge swells with the accident boat to go pick up the injured passenger from the freight vessel, bring it back to the Queen Mary. And the story he had of them trying to, you know, hook up the foals back to the lifeboat to winch it up, and the storm was just the waves and the swells were just raging, and they couldn't get the lifeboat to stay still, and as a result they couldn't hook up the foals, they couldn't raise the boat out of the water. So they had to figure out, how are we going to get this guy who needs, because the reason why the Queen Mary was rescuing them, I forgot to mention, the Queen Mary was fully equipped with a hospital. She had one, you know. So they needed Queen Mary's hospital and her surgeon to help this person who got injured. And so they're thinking, how are we going to haul this guy onto the ship when we can't get the lifeboat to stay still and we can't lift the lifeboat out of the water? What they ended up doing was they took a very big risk. They opened a hatch on the side of the ship, and then they lowered down some ropes. The guy was in a portable gurney, the kind that, you know, it's like a basket. And they hooked it up to the basket. They lifted the guy onto the ship separately, and they had to wait. The folks on the lifeboat, like Ralph Rushton, for instance, and the other crew, they had to wait until there was a calm enough part of the storm before they could be lifted up back onto the ship. Incredible story. That, to me, is way more interesting than, like, oh, I thought I saw someone dressed in 1930s clothing walking down a hallway and calling my name, you know, that kind of thing. You know, or stories of, like, the rogue wave that hit the Queen Mary during World War II that, you know, that nearly completely capsized the ship. A story that was so crazy, it inspired Paul Gallico's The Poseidon Adventure, which was adapted into a successful movie twice. So, you know, it's like there's some amazing stories on the ship that are way more interesting than the ghost stories. Steve is here. Steve from Blue Ribband Productions. I don't know why I say ribband. It's Blue Ribband, but still. Blue Ribband Productions. Ryan says, you look sharp today. Oh, thanks. Max says, got a question. How many ships can you name? Like every ship name you remember. We would be here for a long time. I can't do that. Wish they would make a game of sailing Queen Mary, which you can sail yourself. It would be cool. Yeah, actually, that would be kind of cool to have a little game where you could, like, sail the Queen Mary yourself. That'd be interesting. It wouldn't be exciting, though, because the ship is so big. Everything you do would, like, it would be kind of like, it wouldn't be an exciting game at all. But for those who are obsessed with ships, that would be an interesting game. Mark says, yes, I have heard of this Queen Mary movie. We'll watch it for the footage alone. I wish they had made a movie about the ship itself and her incredible 30 years of achievements. Yeah, you know, it's like I've always said, like, even years ago, you know, when I first had been interested in the ship, I was saying I'm surprised no one makes, like, a Netflix show out of this. You know, like, I can totally picture something along the lines of Downton Abbey, but, you know, taking place aboard the Queen Mary, and it follows both stories of the crew who live and work on the ship and stories of the passengers who come and go. It would be an incredible series that would draw positive attention towards the ship in a way that doesn't focus on the ghosts. I mean, honestly, when you have shows like The Crown or Downton Abbey, I know that they can be a bit, you know, a bit fancy schmancy, but there's something about those kinds of shows that are particularly magical, and there's a reason why there's a huge following for them. And so if there was a show like that took place aboard the Queen Mary and filmed on the Queen Mary, that would be so neat. So neat, you know? Mark says, let's not forget her contribution as a hotel museum since her Long Beach retirement. Yeah, I mean, you know, there's that too. K4RNA says, do you or Steve have anything on the turbo generator rooms? I think we'll eventually have, so we're doing a kind of offshoot of our usual live streams called Queen Mary Tech 101. The first episode next Saturday will be about the boilers, but there might be another episode in the future that'll be about the turbo generators, an episode about the turbine engines, you know, things like that. I know I want to do an episode on the Queen Mary's ventilation and air conditioning system. I think that I know it sounds boring, but there's some interesting stuff about Queen Mary's ventilation. I wouldn't consider putting it on my channel if I didn't think it was interesting. So, Wolf Lord says, where do the Queen Mary's ghost stories come from? We've talked about this like hundreds of times on here, but long story short, some stories were taken from small slivers of truth. You know, there were people on board the ship who worked aboard the ship while it was in Long Beach who claimed they saw things or heard things, and then those stories were kind of taken and turned into a big, you know, theatrical tour. So, you know, that happens to a lot of places that offer haunted tours. They take the stories and they kind of plus them a bit, as Walt Disney would say, you know, kind of adding showmanship to it. And then there were some stories that were just completely made up, you know. And the main culprit I would like to claim is the Disney company. You know, there's stories of crew on the ship who said that, you know, when Disney was about to take over the lease of the Queen Mary, you know, they had representatives there asking people, what ghost stories have you heard? And, you know, they're writing it down and stuff. And then next thing they know, their story is featured as part of the tour, and there's like extra stuff added to the story. So that's kind of where it all came from. Max says, also, how do they dry dock Mauretania in the way they did, like above sea level? You're probably referencing that picture that just was on screen. So that's called a floating dry dock, and we still have those today. Floating dry docks are very useful, and the reason why they float is so that way they can be moved from country to country, city to city, port to port, that kind of thing, as they're needed. So even back in the early days, there were floating dry docks for ships like Mauretania. And so that's what it was. And what the idea is that it goes underneath a ship, and then it empties all its ballast tanks to raise the ship out of the water. And then that's how they do the dry docking without actually having to build a permanent dry dock along a wharf, because a permanent dry dock is really expensive to create and to maintain. Fun Edit says, can a cruise ship cross the Atlantic Ocean? Yes, they can, but they are very careful to choose what season they cross and what voyage they cross at, because they don't want to get stuck in a major storm. An ocean liner, if it gets stuck in a major storm, oh well, it pushes through the storm. A cruise ship, if it gets stuck in a major storm, that could spell absolute doom. So they try the best they can to avoid storms, and if they see one coming on their voyage, they will even go far out of the way to go around the storm. Whereas an ocean liner like Queen Mary 2, they'll do what they can to avoid the worst part of the storm, but they still will sail through it in order to meet their deadline of getting to their destination on time. So cruise ships can cross the Atlantic, and they frequently do during changes of schedule, but they do not do it on a consistent schedule the way an ocean liner would, because they simply can't manage the weather. So, and they can't cross fast enough. You know, some ships take, you know, anywhere between 10 to 14 days to cross the Atlantic, depending on where they're at. But, you know, Queen Mary 2, if she was running at full service speed, she could cross the Atlantic in 4 days. RMS Gigantic, I don't think that's true. RMS Queen Mary's nickname is Titanic too? No. I think Daniel's asking if Carpathia wasn't sunk, would she have been a popular tourist attraction? You know, there's people who are very nostalgic who want me to say yes, but I don't think so. Because usually the reason why ships, any that are preserved and kept to this day, are done so because they have a story to tell. There's a major thing in their history that makes them so worthwhile of keeping. Carpathia did rescue Titanic's passengers, but I don't know that that would be enough for them in the past to have wanted to save the ship. So I don't know. Okay, see you later, Steve. Yeah, Mark. Queen Mary had three, over the years, they had three different types of air conditioning installed aboard the ship. And Steve could go further into detail. You know, he's a certified air conditioning, like we call it HVAC, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. He's a certified HVAC person. And so he could go into detail about the three different types of air conditioning Queen Mary had. And each are interesting. Like, I couldn't, I'm not very good at it. One was like water cooled, one was like gas cooled, and one was like vacuum cooled. It was really weird. So it'll be very interesting. Tyler says, where do the stories come from, I wonder? Yeah. Pirates of the Caribbean reference. Wolf Lord says, what happened in Carpathia's wreck? Why is it so unrecognizable? I couldn't tell you. I don't know much about Carpathia. Disney cruise ships clearly copied the Queen Mary. I wouldn't say so. They don't look at all like the Queen Mary to me. They look like a cruise ship trying to look like an ocean liner, but not the Queen Mary. Fun Edit says, Alex, what if the starboard side and port side of a ship opened up? Would it list or sink level? If both were open at the same time and there was water flooding in? I mean, I'm not an expert on engineering, but I would think that it would sink evenly. Because if water's coming in on both sides and let's say you open a hatch or something and both hatches are the same size, so they permit water at the same amount, the same flow, I would think the ship would sink evenly. But that's hard to say. Max says, I think RMS Queen Mary's nickname was Rolling Mary. Yeah, that was her ominous nickname, was the Rolling Mary. So she also was called the Mary. And some people referred to her as Her Majesty, which was more of a joke than a serious nickname. But she's had many. She was also called the Grey Ghost during World War II, as my friend Chris pointed out that she wasn't the only ship to be called the Grey Ghost during World War II. There were many other ships, but yeah, she's had many nicknames. Conrail asks, have you heard of SS Milwaukee? No, I haven't. Is that an ocean liner? I love these cucumber sandwiches. They're so refreshing. Hello, Spyro. Uh-oh. My chat is not keeping up with the chat. K4RNA says, if you were a multi-billionaire, wouldn't it be cool to completely restore the Queen? I need to win the lottery. Oh, yeah. If I was as rich as Elon Musk, I would totally spend all the money to restore the Queen Mary as best as possible. I wouldn't want her to sail. No, I don't want that to happen. I think she's much more successful sitting where she is and being a museum and a an interesting place to be. So yeah, I would donate a bunch of money towards that if I had it. Spyro says Bloody Mary. I've never heard that nickname in reference to the Queen Mary. Yes, I've heard of MV Astoria. Conrail says SS Milwaukee was a train ferry that sunk on the Great Lakes, aka Lake Michigan. Interesting. I have a friend that has a YouTube channel. What is the name of the channel? I know the name of my friend, but I don't remember the name of the channel because I haven't seen his videos in so long. But he has videos about Great Lakes liners, and I think that was one of his videos. Conrail says, what scale is the train running in the background? It is what's called ON30, which is O scale narrow gauge 30. Daniel says, hey Alex, do you think the 1972 Poseidon movie is better than the 1997 Titanic? No. You know, I'm going to admit something here, you guys. I know Titanic is overly dramatic. I know it's a you know, I know it's a love story based on Romeo and Juliet. I know all that. But I love the movie Titanic. I really do. I think that in terms of enjoyment, it's an enjoyable movie. And there's, you know, they tried, you know, James Cameron tried as best he could to make the story and the details of what happened to the ship as accurate as they knew back in 1996. Of course, the movie came out in 97, but you get the idea. So they tried to make it as accurate as possible. And I commend them for that. You know, I think it's a great movie. I don't think it's like... I don't think it's like the most, you know, most amazing movie of all time. I mean, I like some more artistic movies and things like that. But in terms of a Hollywood blockbuster, I like it a lot. And I like it more than Poseidon Adventure. I do like Poseidon Adventure a lot. But I would not put it against, you know, against Titanic. Like, Titanic is just blows my mind every time I watch it. Brings me to tears. I like movies that make me cry because I like to feel emotions. So if there's a movie that's really sad, I love it. I love it. Wolf Lord says, if you could go back in time and sail on an ocean liner that is not the Queen Mary, what ship would it be? It would be RMS Mauretania. Yeah. And if not RMS Mauretania, it would be RMS Queen Elizabeth. And if not RMS Queen Elizabeth, it would be... If not RMS Queen Elizabeth, then it would be... RMS... Ooh... Either Campania or Oceanic 1899. It isn't Titanic Films by Mark. I don't know what that is. Mike says Titanic is overrated. Titanic is overrated. Unless you're asking about the movie, I don't know. You're talking about the actual ship or the movie. The ship is a bit overrated. The ship is... There was nothing extraordinary about the ship Titanic, except for the fact that it sank. And the way it sank. But... You know, so in that case, I could understand someone who would say that the ship Titanic is overrated. The movie being overrated, I mean, like I said, it's not like an artistic movie. Like, there's better movies out there that I would list. Like, if someone said, Alex, give me a movie that is really artistic and emotional and, you know, and its story is understated and, you know, I'd probably list a couple of different movies for you. Titanic would not be one of them. But in terms of enjoyment, I enjoy watching Titanic. Daniel says, is the 1972 Poseidon movie at least better than the newer ones? I would think so. I thought the 1972 Poseidon movie was really good. The channel. Dangerous Brian says, I would say James Cameron's Titanic is 99% accurate of the disaster. The 1% inaccuracy is obviously the way the angle of the sinking of the stern. Yeah, but there were other things too, like... I mean, there were other things too, like that were very minor, you know, like Rose was staying in, like, 2 completely different suites. One was, like, the Strauss suite, another one was, like, somebody else's suite. Like, that doesn't make sense. Like, I wouldn't say all of it was accurate, but... Oh, I heard a noise, and I was like, what is that? It's my air conditioning turning on. But, I mean, yeah, I mean... Oh, I see, Tyler. Wolf Lord says, there are so many beautiful White Star Line ocean liners pre-Titanic. It's sad I've never heard of them. Yeah, I mean, you know, I've had to look them up because not many people talk about them compared to Titanic. K4RNA says, so we can nerd out on Poseidon. Mr. Shelby said the turbo generator could power Charleston, South Carolina, and Atlanta, Georgia. At the time, maybe, you know, the movie takes place in the late 60s, early 70s. I don't know because... I don't know. I don't want to make any assumptions about the turbo generators. I think that might have been an overstatement, though. Hey, Malibu Company. Peyton says, what is your favorite exterior place to visit on Queen Mary and favorite interior space? So exterior, my favorite place to visit on the Queen Mary would have to be the forecastle deck, which is on the bow of the ship. That's always fun. It's always fun to be there and to turn around and look back at the superstructure of the ship and the funnel, and you know, that's a cool spot. An interior space would have to be the first class main lounge. Definitely. SS Normandy says, I don't like the carpet they added in Queen Mary. Neither do I, honestly. I don't like the carpet they added in the Queen Mary. Hello, Malibu Company. Hey, Conrad, how's it going? How are you this afternoon, Alex? Glad to be joining now. It's good to see you, too. I'm doing good. Just enjoying cucumber sandwich. Hey Daniel, you already asked about the SS City of Milwaukee, or at least somebody else did. I just finished talking about the City of Milwaukee, or not the, no, I'm sorry, the SS Milwaukee, or City of Milwaukee. Well, either one. Someone was just talking about SS Milwaukee. So, and I was just finished explaining. It was Conrail. Yeah, Conrail was talking about SS Milwaukee. So yeah. Thomas, please keep the conversation about ocean liners, trains, you know, stuff that I feature on my channel. I don't talk about phones and games and computers and stuff like that, or bicycles. So try to keep it about the stuff about my channel. Oh boy. So I'm supposed to go down to Southern California later this month. The original plan was to be there for when the Queen Mary reopened. There was a lot of talk about the Queen Mary opening October 1st. But like I've been saying, they aren't sure that they can have the ship open by October 1st. It just may be some other time this fall. So, but regardless, I still have to go down to Southern California at the end of the month. So I'm kind of bummed because I wanted to use that opportunity to film the Queen Mary. I'm still hoping against hope that the ship will reopen October 1st. I'm still hoping. But I know there's some people who want me to go to Disneyland and film Disneyland, just like I used to, but I don't see myself doing that. Disneyland is really expensive, especially during the time I'm going to be visiting. Also, it's a hassle. You know, Disneyland is not fun for me anymore. Like, when I was a kid, it was really fun because, you know, you could just pop in anytime you wanted. But today, it's like you have to reserve everything. And there's no guarantee you're going to even get in the park after spending your money. So, you know, it's too stressful. I don't want to visit Disneyland. So, I might go to Universal with my friends because I've always wanted to see the Harry Potter land that they have there. Ever since they installed it in 2015, I've always kind of been like, I want to see that. I want to, you know, I grew up as a Harry Potter fan, so not like a major fan. Like, I couldn't tell you everything about it, but I mean, but yeah. So that might be something I'm doing when I go down to Southern California later this month. If I get the opportunity to film anything historic while I'm down there, I'll try. I want to bring more stuff to my channel, but you know, it's difficult. Like, I wanted to film the Hotel del Coronado in San Diego, and I was gonna stay there a night. But then when I saw the prices, I was like, no way, no way. So I don't know what I'm gonna do, you guys. I don't know. Thank you, Conrad, for taking care of that. Max says, funny thing, your train passing by sounds like raindrops, so I thought it's raining. Oh, yeah, that's the sound of the wheels going over the joints on the rails. I like that sound. Dangerous Brian says, so have you never heard of RMS Oceanic, RMS Adriatic, RMS Atlantic, RMS Cedric, RMS Majestic, SS Baltic, to name a few ships West Island? I have, yes. I've heard of all those ships. Yeah. I'm going to have more of this tea. The days where I make Earl Grey are my favorite days because it's my favorite tea. K4RNA says, I love that your railroad is just chugging along, so relaxing. It really is, you know, like, there's like two different kinds of railroading you can do. And one is like what I do, which is like a continuous loop. But then there's another one called like point-to-point railroading. And point-to-point railroading for model railroads is like there's no loop. It goes from one depot to the other, and you don't turn the train around necessarily. You might have like turntables to turn the locomotive around, but the train itself only goes back and forth. And so I've never been a fan of point-to-point railroading. I've always been the kind of person, I like loops. I like trains to go around and loop. So yeah, I love this thing. And I've also been saving up some supplies for continuing to build it. I know people have been waiting to see me like add more stuff to the thing, but it's expensive. Let me just tell you guys, it's expensive. But I will. I have some supplies saved up right now to build some mountains and things. I just don't have enough paint. So, you know, I need more paint. I need to figure out what I'm going to do about this track, because this track is not the right size for this scale. And so I do have problems where when the trains are rolling over the switches, they kind of bounce a little bit. So, although you wouldn't know it when you look at it going over this one. You know, I'm pretty sure that when I was building this thing, I looked carefully at the wheel flanges and the height of the rail before I bought the whole set. I was like, I wanted to make sure that there was no issues with the rail not being tall enough. And I'm pretty sure there still isn't. But whenever I see the locomotive go over that switch way over there, it bounces. Also, I don't know if you guys noticed the blue light in the background. In the last live stream, I upgraded my lighting, so now I have a blue background. I can change it to any color pretty much. Mark Raymond says, any thoughts about USS Texas being moved to dry dock? I'm not much of a like warship fan, so I don't follow it, but I did stumble across a video showing it heading to dry dock, which I thought was interesting to watch it get moved. But I mean, I'm not a fan of warships, just ocean liners. So like not yachts or anything, but Peden says, my father crossed on Queen Elizabeth in 1958. I believe I remember him saying that baths were salt water and you were given a pitcher of fresh water to rinse. Was this how things were done on Queen Mary? Yes, absolutely. So, if you were on the ship, fresh water... So the ships, they had what are called water softening plants. And in fact, most cruise ships have them even today as well. And Titanic had one. But it's where they filter seawater to create fresh water. Or they can filter seawater to create clean salt water. And so on Queen Mary, they offered both in the bathrooms for taking a shower or a bath. And the reason why they offered both was because just like today, salt water is considered therapeutic. So, I mean, I don't know if it really is, but I mean, they say it is. So they offered all passengers the ability to either bathe in fresh water or bathe in salt water. And if you were to bathe in salt water, you would have to rinse yourself with fresh water to get all the salt off of you. But it was an option, yeah. But your father could have easily also bathed in just plain fresh water. But they also, there was a possibility they may have asked your father to bathe in salt water, because sometimes if there was like a maintenance issue with the water softening plant, they may not be able to produce enough fresh water for the whole ship if they had to, like, let's say, reduce the capacity. So they might tell all passengers, hey, if you're going to bathe or something, bathe in salt water and rinse in fresh water. And so they've done that a few times, just depending on what kind of issues they faced. But that's also why the swimming pools on the ships were saltwater swimming pools, is because it just would have taken a lot of effort to filter all that water to make it fresh water, and then to chlorinate it, you know, for safety. You might as well just use salt. So yeah, they did cool stuff like that. And even to this day on the Queen Mary, if you stay on one of the first class rooms, you can still see on some of the shower heads, they still have the 4 faucets, 2 for fresh water, which operate, and then 2 for salt water, which no longer operate. So, pretty neat. I'm going to reheat the tea a little bit. Wolflord says, your top 10 ocean liners video taught me about a ship I never heard about, the Kron Prince Wilhelm. Yep. I think on the inside it was a beautiful ship. But so many people don't want to see it that way. Max asks, how long did a sailing ship transatlantic voyage take? So some took 45 days. And the reason why is, this is a sailing ship again. A sailing ship, not a steamship. But the reason why was because, frankly, you just couldn't predict the weather back then. You know, you might set sail and you've got a good wind going, and so you've got a good speed. But then maybe like a few days into your voyage, all of a sudden the wind stops. You got no breeze and you're kind of just floating around, you know. So they had ways of trying to help that. Like, I don't want people to think like I'm only giving you like the only information there is on it. But they had ways to try to help continue their propulsion and, you know, things like oars and whatever. But yeah, so it would take about 45 days, but it was never, like, from my understanding, from the research I did, it was hard to schedule an arrival. They could give you an estimated date, but if the weather was particularly nasty on a voyage, you really had no control over how soon you got there. Sometimes a storm would blow you off course very far, and it would take you a long time to get back. So, you know, I know there's been people who didn't like when I said that in one of my videos. They were like, no, they had arrival dates. It's like, they had arrival dates for some lines, but it's not like they could meet those arrival dates consistently. Because frankly, it's like they used to say, like, you know, it really just depended on when God decided you arrived at your destination. So it's not hot enough, but I don't want to water it down too much or else it just won't taste good. I should have preheated the cup before I poured the tea in. That might have helped warm up the tea a bit more. Oh well. Alright, let's see. Daniel says, what are some locomotives that you are considering purchasing for your ON30 layout? I'm not considering purchasing anymore because it's a small layout and I only have capacity for 2 locomotives. And I have 2. You know, I have a small porter. It's a 042. And then I have a Forney, a 244T. So, I really don't have the room for a 3rd locomotive. But if I did, if I came across a good price for a locomotive, the one I would prefer to have is they have a ON30 scale 440. I would want that. Or maybe a second Forney. I wouldn't mind a second one. But But with all the trouble I had with the first one, I don't know if I want to go through that again. This first one, when I bought it, the guy told me, "Oh yeah, it works. It's perfectly fine." And I thought, that's weird. Why is he selling it to me for 50% of the price? But I bought it, brought it home, put it on the track. It didn't work. And I had to take it all apart, and I found out that the reason why was because 2 of the bus wires that picked up electricity from the track had no insulation on them, so they were shorting out constantly. So I actually had to buy a material that coats a wire and creates I just used the word. Creates a rubber seal around the wire to prevent any short circuiting from happening. I had to buy that and do that, and that was just a whole mess. And then the other thing too was that this was originally what's called a digital command control, DCC, but my train layout is only direct current, DC, and it's not designed for digital control. And the thing was that supposedly the microchip on the locomotive was designed to be able to do both. That's what it advertised, but it didn't work. So I had to remove the microchip. Well, I didn't. No, yeah, I did. I removed it. Yeah, I removed the microchip. And so I rewired it so it runs on DC only. Now, some people are wondering, like, why didn't you just convert to DCC? That's the new thing. I know, but it's way more expensive. And like the controller I have that controls the power of this whole layout was $50. But the controller I would need to buy for this whole layout would cost around $150 at least. And I'm like, why? What does it give me that I want? Nothing. It might give me the ability to move more than one locomotive at a time, but the layout is so small, I really couldn't run 2 trains at the same time. It just wouldn't be feasible. So, I didn't need DCC. I still don't need it. So, that's my story. Let's have some of these Scottish shortbread. What if a truck was carrying sailboat fuel? Sailboats don't... Well, I guess they have electric generators, so they might need fuel for that, but... I don't know. I mean, if you're asking about an ocean liner, a single truck could not carry all the fuel an ocean liner would need. Oh, this is so good. When the shortbread is made right, it's like biting into a pillow. I know it sounds silly, but it's so fluffy. Oh my god. And I don't have a food processor to make the shortbread in. I make it by hand. I actually squish the butter with my fingers. So, when it turns out right, it feels so... What's the word? Like a good accomplishment when I get it right. So buttery. Yeah, Tyler, I can see how that would feel disrespectful. Hey, Derpy. Yep, all's going well. Yeah, everyone, hit the like button. SS Normandy says, yeah, but getting all that salt in your eyes is so painful. Is it? You know, I've never been like snorkeling or diving or anything in the ocean, so I've never opened my eyes in ocean water, so I don't know how it feels. I know some people say it's uncomfortable, but I've opened my eyes underwater in a swimming pool, and that feels way more uncomfortable. So even to this day, like, well, I don't go swimming anymore because I hate pools. I I hate swimming. I can swim, I know how, I just hate it. But when I would go swimming, I did open my eyes underwater a few times, and I couldn't stand the way that felt. It felt like sandpaper against my eyes. So, yeah, but... Mark, I think you're talking about the USS Texas. Yeah, Thomas, you've been asked a lot to stop doing what you're doing. Conrad, if you want, you can hide Thomas from the channel completely, because it's obvious that Thomas is one of those people that they're not here to be serious. They're here to get banned. That's what they want. Let's give it to them. So... I hate to do that, people. Like, I love talking to people. Like, you can see, I'm answering everybody's questions. Like, I love talking to people. But there's some people who, they come here not because they want to talk, but because they want to be banned. Like, it's like some kind of goal of theirs or whatever. And so I think that's what they do. And they try to, like, rile up everybody. So, I mean, give them what they want. If they want to be hidden from the channel, then let's hide them from the channel. Derpy says, have you perhaps heard of the 1944 film Between Two Worlds? I hear quite a bit of it was filmed aboard the Queen Mary. I have not, actually. No. There was a lot of movies filmed aboard Queen Mary as well. Trying to think of one, but I can't. You know, Steve would remember. Steve would know. Spyro says, what is your favorite thing about the original RMS Queen Elizabeth? That's a good question. That actually that requires me to do some thinking, because Queen Elizabeth is beautiful. I still love Queen Mary more, but what would be my favorite thing about the original Queen Elizabeth? Well, the main hall on the Queen Elizabeth looked really cool. It had extra high ceilings, taller than the main hall ceilings on Queen Mary, which were already like 12-foot ceilings, I think. So I think the one on Queen Elizabeth was like 16-foot ceilings or something like that. It was huge, huge. Beautiful room. I think another interesting feature about Queen Elizabeth is the sports deck, which was the highest passenger deck on the ship. Was very open compared to Queen Mary, because Queen Mary has all the ventilation cowl vents that block the walkways. So sometimes if you want to go from one end of the sports deck to the other, you'd have to like go downstairs and cross over and do all these weird things just to get there. But with Queen Elizabeth, it was one open deck, so you could go from the front of the sports deck to the back, and it was easy. So that's one of the things I do admire about Queen Elizabeth. Although I like the way Queen Mary's cowl vents look. I think it looks so old-fashioned, so I like it, but... yeah, I think that would be it. The main hall is certainly something on Queen Elizabeth that I find really beautiful and fascinating. I'm trying to think, like, I do like her other rooms, like the main lounge, the main first-class restaurant. Like, those are beautiful spaces in their own, but I still prefer Queen Mary's over Queen Elizabeth's. But if I had to choose, like, you know, between like RMS Campania versus Queen Elizabeth, I'd choose Queen Elizabeth. I think she's just more beautiful. But oh, there is one feature. There is one feature on Queen Elizabeth. I think it was the main lounge. She had these beautiful standing lamps. They were Art Deco style. They were kind of like a very slim pyramid shape going up, and then the actual lamp part was a inverted pyramid. Beautiful, beautiful standing lamps. And you can see them in pictures and stuff, like beautiful Art Deco standing lamps. And I've tried finding something for the house that looks like it. I came close to finding something that looked like it, but it was like $300. I'm like, I'm not spending $300 on a standing lamp. Like, I'd have to be like Elon Musk rich to just shell out $300 for a standing lamp. But I wanted one. I thought those are so cool. So that was one feature that I was like, I wish Queen Mary had that. I love Queen Mary's, her lamps were not standing lamps. They were, for the main lounge, they were, they're the onyx. The onyx vase lamps. Those are really cool. Now, if I had a replica of those, I'd love that as well. I would love that as well. But, yeah, a lot of cool stuff. Gigantic says, hey Alex, RMS Queen Mary, her sister ship, Queen Elizabeth, she sank on fire. Ship got burnt. Yes, she did. Okay, just making sure I'm getting to everybody's comments as best I can. Okay, I read that one. Caleb says, in terms of beauty, what is your favorite number of funnels for a liner? Again, I'm biased, so I would say Queen Mary has 3 funnels. I think it looks great. But, you know, I do like the way Mauretania looks with the 4 funnels. I think what is really important to me on an ocean liner in terms of beauty is that the funnels themselves are equally spaced apart. So, like, on the SS Kronprinz Wilhelm, or Wilhelm, I don't know how it's pronounced, SS Kronprinz Wilhelm, I like the interiors of that ship, but the exterior with the funnels spaced 2 and 2 like that, like, there's something about that I don't like. I don't like that they're not evenly spaced. So as long as a liner has evenly spaced funnels, even if it's just 2 funnels, I think it looks great. You know, and even liners with 1 funnel looks great. But do I have a favorite number? Like, I know a lot of people would say 4 because they started off as a Titanic fan. They go, oh, I love 4. But 3, to me, actually looks more aesthetically pleasing because I don't know how to describe it, but when I was in culinary school, the chefs, they'd always say when you serve things like scallops, or you'd serve like pork chops or something, you always serve it in an odd number because odd numbers are more visually pleasing to the eye, even though the person eating the food doesn't quite understand why. There's something about odd numbers. You never want to put an even number on a plate. So that's why if you folks have ever ordered, like, you know, jalapeno poppers from a restaurant or something, you know, they always give it to you in an odd number. And that's because it's a culinary, like, rule. Like, you should serve things in odd numbers when you can. If it's above the number 9, then it doesn't matter. That's the rule. So if you're serving people, like, onion rings, and let's say it's a huge batch of onion rings and there's more than 9, it doesn't matter how many you serve them, as long as it meets the amount of onion rings that the restaurant wants to serve or something like that. But yeah, so anything below 9 looks more visually pleasing when it's served in odd numbers. And so I think 3 funnels looks more visually appealing to me than 4. So 4 looks way too symmetrical, if that makes any sense. That's one of the things people love about Titanic, Olympic, Britannic. They're very symmetrical ships. If you were to draw a line anywhere on the ship and then reverse that image, it would match both sides, pretty much. That's something I don't like. When you look at Queen Mary or Queen Elizabeth, you might notice if you're looking at them from the side that on both ships, their funnels are slightly forward of the ship as opposed to center. So like the mid funnel on Queen Mary is not at the center of the ship. It's slightly forward of the center, ever so slightly. There's something about that look that looks fast, speedy, sleek. That to me looks appealing. So Titanic is way too symmetrical for my taste. It just looks too... It just looks a little bit on the weird side. Like I don't even know the word, not uncanny, but just strange. And even Mauretania, her 4 funnels were located slightly forward of the ship. So that to me is more visually appealing than Titanic's evenly spaced 4 funnels that are located midship, you know? So yeah, it's kind of weird, I know, but that's just how I feel. My goodness. K4RNA says, when the Queen Mary opens, I would love for you to make a contact on the Queen Mary from the radio room. I'm a ham radio operator. We can totally use the station. Make a contact on the Queen... I don't know. I don't know anything about the current radio room there. And who knows, I might not even be there when the ship reopens. If it reopens in November, there's no way I'm going to be there. But, you know, maybe next year if I'm here. Or there, I mean to say. If I'm there next year, then maybe. Trying to... Oh, here we go. Mark says, is your Forney 244T a Disney locomotive? This one is not, but there is a 244T at Disneyland, which is probably why you're asking. The Fred Gurley locomotive is a 244T. But this one is not a Disney locomotive. This is... this one is unlettered, and it's all black. It's unlettered, but it looks a lot like the locomotives on the Wiscasset, Waterville, and Farmington Railroad in Maine. So if you look up that railroad, they have Forney style engines that look just like this. And as a matter of fact, this engine has many different, like you can buy it in different styles, different style of headlamp, different style of, you can get like inside frame, outside frame for the wheels. I chose this particular style because it looks most like Disneyland's Fred Gurley engine. I love Disneyland's Fred Gurley engine. It's a beautiful locomotive. So I made sure that this one looked just like it. But in terms of color and everything, it looks more like one of the Wiscasset, Waterville, and Farmington locomotives. I'm very curious, Thomas, why you keep asking questions that have nothing to do with the channel. We keep trying to tell you to ask questions that are based on the channel, not like what iPhone I have, or do I use self-storage, do I play Angry Birds. Like, I would love to have you here asking questions about the channel, and then we can talk about stuff like that, but I can't, you know, veer off onto other subjects. That's not what this channel is about. Wolflord said, one day I want to see the Queen Mary in person. It's a beautiful ship. I mean, she's been in dire need of some TLC, but she's a beautiful ship underneath it all, you know. And from what I heard, there's been some refreshing of the interiors. I wouldn't say a lot, but I mean, there's been some refreshing of the interiors. I'm hoping that there might be some new carpeting, but I don't know. They didn't say anything about carpeting, so. But it would be really nice to see what they did, and what the city of Long Beach has shared with the public is that the ship is getting some paint touch-ups, some light fixture replacements, things like that. So it sounds like the ship will look prettier when she reopens than she did when she closed. So that's good. That's good news either way. Hey, Goofy Rolls, how's it going? Hey, Ryan. Roddy McQueen says, my grandmother and great-grandmother were born in England, and I think they may have been on the Queen Mary. There's a likely chance. There's an old saying that goes that everybody in some way has some connection to the Queen Mary. You either have been on, know of, or know somebody who's been on or knows of the Queen Mary. That's a major deal, because when you think about it, the only other ship that can claim that kind of fame is Titanic. You know of Titanic either because of the films or the movies. Queen Mary has never had like a major film or movie specifically about her. Poseidon, yes, but Queen Mary is not the Poseidon. So when you think about it, like the fact that pretty much anybody you ask, in some way, shape, or form has some kind of connection to the Queen Mary is a huge deal. Ryan says, it's been hot here in California. You're lucky you don't have to deal with the heat. Yeah, I mean, I bought my air conditioner early last month, and I've loved it, because I've spent the last 2 years up here, and every summer there's like a heat wave, and it gets really hot and really humid hot too, because we're surrounded by rivers and ponds and lakes, so it just gets really humid. Yeah, so I love having my air conditioning now. Max says, do you agree with the Olympic-class ships for having the worst luck ever? I think collectively, yeah, they do have the worst luck. Max says, wasn't the Queen Elizabeth's wreck a secret government hideout in an old movie? Yeah, it was in a it was in a James Bond movie. Wolford says, did a ship ever have 5 funnels? Yes. Particularly Great Lakes liners. Mark Raymond says, Locomotives 3 and 5 at Disneyland are fornies. That's why I asked. Nice history on your personal unit. Yeah. Number 3, Fred Gurley, and number 5, Ward Kimball. Both are forny engines. I like the way Ward Kimball looks. I wish I could buy one like that in this scale, but no one makes anything like that. And I'm not much of a scratch builder, so I can scratch build buildings, I can scratch build landscapes, but I can't scratch build locomotives or cars. I've tried. I'm very bad at it. So, but I would love to have one in this scale that looks just like the Ward Kimball. Oh yeah, Great Eastern had 5 funnels. Conrad says, were some of Queen Mary's interior wood veneers getting refinished? Yes, so from what we know, they were working on the veneers of the first class smoking room on Promenade deck. So they were talking about kind of refurbishing the veneers on those because they are quite old and the varnish is faded on it. So they want to get rid of, the varnish and restain it and then put a new varnish on it. So I'm really hoping when the ship reopens, that room will look like brand new, honestly. So that'll look really cool. The man with the golden gun, that's right. Ryan Hines says, what are your thoughts on Disneyland refurbishing their old rides? Refurbishing is always a good thing, but sometimes when they refurbish, though, they remove what was originally there and then they kind of replace it with something that isn't as good. It just really depends. Like, I mean, I have no problem with them updating rides. I just hope I always hope, like anybody else, that they update the rides with something just as interesting or better. That's really all I hope for. But sometimes in the past, Disney has replaced rides with something that wasn't as good. John C. says, I don't go to the Queen Mary when I was in Long Beach area. I did see the battleship up the road. Yeah, the USS Iowa, I think it was. I've never been there, but some friends want me to go. Maybe when I go to Southern California, maybe that's where I'll go. I'll go to the USS Iowa. I think it's open. That's probably what I'll do. Because I do need to, like, I want to see something historical and bring something back to you guys, Ryan Hines says, Alex, what 3 types of tea flavor do you usually have the most for your Cunard tea times? Oh, that's easy, because I really only drink 3 types of tea for these tea times now. English breakfast tea, Earl Grey, and Lady Grey. So those are the 3 teas that I drink for tea time. I used to be more adventurous. I was trying out different teas. I even tried out Irish breakfast tea. Irish breakfast tea is okay, but I just didn't enjoy it as much as the other 3, so I don't drink it anymore. Mark says, in fact, Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth have touched the entire world. Just given their World War II service, the whole globe owes them a debt, and it's directly or indirectly connected to our lives as we know it today. Exactly. As Harmony says, will they polish the wood? They would have to if they're going to varnish it. You have, like, well, honestly, you wouldn't even need to polish varnish. I mean, you that is a step in varnishing something. So I guess my simple answer is yes. If they're going to revarnish it, they do have to polish it. So, Hero says, hello, I'm very new to Canard ships. Awesome. I kind of am too. Dangerous Brian says, wasn't the Great Eastern built by Isambard Kingdom Brunel? I believe it was, yes. Derpy says, wasn't Queen Mary's smoking room recently restored for a show, being the Ricardos? The floor, I mean. No. So, there were many rooms aboard the Queen Mary that were used for the movie Being the Ricardos. But they didn't refurbish the rooms to do it. They built sets within the rooms. So, particularly the smoking room looked almost unrecognizable because they built new walls as part of the set. So, they didn't refurbish the room to do the movie. They built a set within the room. And then when it came to, Desi Arnaz's nightclub, they used the main lounge of the Queen Mary for that. And they redecorated some things. They extended the stage out a little bit to make more room for the orchestra band. But they didn't do much. And it certainly didn't refurbish the rooms. That's just not how it works. Like, film crews don't often pay for refurbishments. They just pay to use the room. So those rooms are being restored by the city right now, as far as I understand it. And the city of Long Beach says that they recently finished the restoration of the floor of the first-class smoking room. But there's some context that's really important here, folks. The dance floor that is currently in the first-class smoking room is not original flooring to the ship. Not at all. It was installed in the 80s. Possibly the 90s. It's not at all original. In fact, most of the ship does not have its original floors. It's all either been replaced with carpeting, brand new linoleum, or fake dance floors. So, they claim that they refurbished the floor in the first class smoking room. And they showed a picture, but it looked like there was large scratches on the floor. I don't know why. Maybe the picture was taken before they did the work. I don't know. But it's not original. But it'll be nice if it's taken care of. At least that's another feature that, once again, will not look run down. So it's always good, to take care of the ship either way. But I didn't want people to think like, oh, they restored original flooring. Well, it's not original. So, SS Normally says, could you describe how it smells in Queen Mary? Yeah, very easily. To me, it smells like a library because it's all wood veneers. So when you walk in, it certainly smells like a library. And then there's another odor. The carpets on the ship are really old. They're not original. They're, 80s, 90s, early 2000s even. But some of the carpets on the ship are really old. They've gotten a bit musty. So it smells like a library with old carpets. That's what it smells like. And some people have been like, oh, it smells disgusting when you step aboard. And I'm like, it really doesn't. Like, I've spent a lot of time in libraries. I used to love reading books. I've spent a lot of time in libraries. And it just smells like an old library. And I don't think libraries smell disgusting. I love the smell of the books and the wooden shelves and the wood paneled walls. I love that smell. It reminds me of books. And books make me feel good. I'm reading a book right now, in fact. Not at this moment, but I'm reading a book. I love the smell of books. And so, yeah, Queen Mary to me smells like an old library, complete with carpeting that needs to be replaced. but it doesn't smell disgusting to me. But it's cool because when I went to the Queen Mary in 2020, January 2020, I hadn't been there in quite literally 10 years at that point, because the last time before that was in 2010. And I had completely forgotten my 2010 experience. Back then I wasn't into ocean liners in 2010. I was just visiting the Queen Mary just to take advantage of cheap tickets that I got. But when I went in 2020, I was there because I had learned a little bit about the ship and I really wanted to see if I could make some videos about it or something, like some vlogs really, but I didn't plan to actually go full out Queen Mary history like I've done. But when I was there, it was really cool because I remember being on the outside and filming over the sides of the gangway and then going, all right, time to go in. And the second I stepped in, it was like whoosh. It was like going back in time. And then the smell of the wood paneling and the smell of it being like a library. I was like, whoa, this ship looks and smells old. I loved it. I fell in love immediately. So yeah. Daniel says, hey Alex, in long story short, what does it mean when people say Queen Mary is too heavy? I don't know, because I've never heard someone say that. That Queen Mary is too heavy. I've never heard someone say that. Wolf Lord says, why do books have such a nice smell to them? I don't know. It's just one of the magic of books, I guess. I have this book that's about 30 years old, and I'm reading it right now. And sometimes when I'm reading it, I just take a moment to just smell the book. I love books. I don't know what... There's something about them. Dangerous Brian says, this is a good book you're currently reading? Yeah, I've read it once before when I was a teenager. It's The Vampire Lestat by Anne Rice. So I read that once when I was a teenager. I did a book report on it. I was like the weirdest kid in school because I was the only kid in school who was doing book reports on like Anne Rice books. Like everybody else was doing stuff like Twilight or whatever, you know, like or something else entirely, but you know, some people were going by like school curriculum or whatever. I was doing Anne Rice books. I loved Anne Rice books. So I read the entire Vampire Chronicles series by Anne Rice, all the books as a teenager. And recently I was kind of like, you know, I really loved those books and I haven't read them in like 15 years or something like that. So I was like, it's time for me to go back and read them again. So yeah, I'm on the Vampire Lestat and I'm loving it just as I did when I was a teenager. I was like, this is so cool. Like, yeah, I love it. And the book is older than me, so it's like 30 some odd years old. Oh, Daniel says I meant top heavy. What does it mean when people say Queen Mary is top heavy? It doesn't really mean anything, to be honest, because Queen Mary is not top heavy. But people say top heavy because what they mean to say is that Queen Mary has a much higher distribution of weight on the top than she probably should have. But that doesn't mean that she's quite literally top heavy. It doesn't mean that there is more weight on the top than there is on the bottom. Because if that were true, the ship would have keeled over a long time ago. That's just how, you know, boats work, ships work. But when they say the Queen Mary is top heavy, what they're actually saying is that the distribution of weight is not as bottom balanced as it should be. There's a bit more weight on top than it should be. And it was like that when the Queen Mary went into service. And if you've watched my video about the Rolling Mary, it's called the video is called the Rolling Mary. It talks about why the Queen Mary was known as the Rolling Mary. And one of the major reasons, there's multiple reasons what led her to that, but one of the major reasons was the Queen Mary was originally designed to have 29 double-ended Scotch boilers. Now, for those that know, she was originally put into service with only 3 double-ended Scotch boilers. The 3 double-ended Scotch boilers operated the 2 turbo generator rooms and the passenger services, including the kitchens. But she was originally supposed to have 29. The other 27 being for, or not 29, I'm sorry. 27 total, sorry, 27 total. But 24 of them were going to be for the propulsion. Well, the ship was already well into construction when Cunard decided instead they wanted to go with 24 Yarrow boilers. So they did keep 3 of the Scotch boilers, but they wanted the 24 propulsion boilers to be Yarrow boilers because they were slightly more fuel efficient. Now, if you guys have been paying attention to what I've been saying about the Queen Mary all this time, was that the Queen Mary, the Cunard was under so much pressure from the government, the British government, to make a ship that would win them back the blue ribbon, because it was kind of an embarrassment to the UK that they no longer commanded the seas with the fastest ships. So they put a lot of pressure on Cunard to make the Queen Mary the fastest ship once again, so that way they could have the blue ribbon. And the British could claim supremacy over the sea. Well, Cunard is a company, and companies like to save money, and one of the ways you save money on ships is you make them fuel efficient. Well, unfortunately, because they were under so much pressure, they couldn't afford to make the Queen Mary fuel efficient, because she needed to win the ribbon. So she needed raw power. So they gave her 24 propulsion dedicated boilers. And the double-ended Scotch boilers, they weighed a lot and they produced a lot of steam, but they figured out that if they ordered 24 Yarrow boilers instead, the Yarrow boilers could produce just as much steam, just as much volume of steam, and they were slightly more fuel efficient than double-ended Scotch boilers. So they went with the Yarrow boilers. But the Yarrow boilers weighed slightly less than the Scotch boilers. By how much, I don't know. I couldn't tell you. That part has been omitted from my research. I've looked and looked and looked. Couldn't find the difference. But, and they were going to be large double-ended Scotch boilers. Bigger than the ones that were in Boiler Room 1. Slightly bigger. Not like by a lot, but I'm rambling. But basically, they weighed less than the design of the Scotch boilers. And because of that, the ship was not as heavy on the bottom as she should have been, which means that there was slightly more weight on the top than there should have been. And that's why the Queen Mary rolled. She had other reasons too. You know, there were other things like ballast and cargo and all that sort of stuff that played into the efforts, but that is essentially why she became the Rolling Mary, as far as my research has pointed. So that's what people mean. But just to make sure everybody knows that Queen Mary is not quite literally top heavy, because if that were true, she would have keeled over a long time ago. Mike says, does the Queen Mary's engine room still smell of fuel oil? You know, I don't know what fuel oil smells like, so I couldn't tell you. But I do know that the engine room didn't have any particular odor. It was cold, and it smelled like metal, but it didn't have any particular odor. You know, like you walk into the rest of the ship where the passenger areas are, it smells like a library. But when you go into the engine room, it doesn't smell like anything in particular. Just smells like air conditioning, really. Now, an interesting thing is that about the Queen Mary's engines, when the ship was retired and they were cutting out engineering spaces and converting them into tour areas and whatever, they didn't actually flush out the pipes or anything that led to the engines or the engineering rooms and the, lubricant pipes and steam pipes and fuel oil pipes. They didn't flush any of that stuff out. They left it as is. And so to this day, the pipes still have a lot of lubricants and fuel oils in them. And so you'll see when you walk through engine rooms and stuff, you might occasionally see that right where two pipes are bolted together, they'll have a bucket hanging from it. And the bucket is meant to catch dripping oil and lubricants that are still in the pipes. And from what I have heard, and my friend Steve might disagree with this, I think he did before, but from what I heard, they didn't clean out the oil tanks either. The ship had oil tanks along the sides of the hull. From what I understand, they didn't clean those out. They emptied them and moved the oil, and it was, I don't know, I think it was used for other things in Long Beach. But as far as my understanding is, they didn't actually clean the tanks, though. So even to this day, when you walk through those rooms, the boiler rooms, you can see where fuel oil had smudged along the walls. They had eventually leaked through the walls in certain areas. Maybe it dripped from pipes that were being cut down, that kind of thing. But all those black smudges along the walls are still there from the fuel oil. So is it flammable? No. It lost its flammability a long time ago, because fuel oil eventually loses its flammability. But yeah, it's pretty crazy stuff. Yeah, Queen Mary's getting some restoration, Hero. Not too much stuff that you'll notice with your own eyes, but there's a lot going on below the ship, like in the boiler rooms and stuff. They are rebuilding 2 of the watertight bulkheads because a marine engineering computer system determined that to keep the ship watertight, 2 of the watertight bulkheads down there needed to be restored. They're also installing 11 automatic bilge pumps and water intrusion alarms, designed so if for some weird reason the ship were to develop a leak, which she can't, because frankly her outside of her hull is still watertight. Her steel plates are still an inch thick. She may not be young, but she's in remarkably good condition for her age. Again, the press doesn't want to tell you that because that doesn't sell papers. So, but she's in remarkably good condition for her age, and just in case she ever does spring a leak for whatever reason, an asteroid comes flying down from space and eventually comes down to the size of a pebble and punctures the underwater area. I don't know, but those bilge pumps are designed to pump out the water in case something like that happens. So she'll be very safe when she reopens, safer than she was when she closed. Because when she closed, she didn't have working bilge pumps, and she did not have enough watertight bulkheads left to keep the ship from flooding all the way across the bottom. Some people have seen pools of water in the boiler rooms or the engine rooms of the ship. Those were not seawater. Those were like leaks from plumbing up above the ship, or rainwater leaks even from high up above in the ship. But she's never sprung a seawater leak. So that's never been seawater. And also, you have to think too that she has a double hull. So even if the outer hull were punctured, the inner hull would also lock that water and keep it from coming into the ship. She's got a double hull, so that's why it's highly unlikely we would ever see her sink and capsize. It's just extremely unlikely at the moment. So oh, derpy, when you open a book and it makes that squeak. Yeah, I know that sound. Peden says, did any of Queen Mary's staterooms have private balconies, promenades? No private balconies. Did any have private promenades? No, I don't think so. No. No. Now that I'm thinking about it, no, most certainly not. Queen Mary did not have any private promenades. Yeah, I was just triple checking in my head just to make sure, but no private promenades, no private balconies. Normandy says, imagine if you could buy a Queen Elizabeth light fixture. I mean, if you look eBay long enough, you might find one. Dangerous Brian says, okay, I've never read any of the Vampire Chronicle books, but obviously I have the movie adaptation of Interview with the Vampire. The movie adaptation is really good. That screenplay was written by Anne Rice, so she wrote the screenplay of that movie herself, so she signed off on that movie. She loved it. And it's a good movie, I mean, the book is quite different than the movie, but, I mean, you have to give some artistic license, because if you were to make a book into a full-length movie, the movie would be 8 hours long. It would be ridiculous if you tried to remake a whole movie. So you're essentially squeezing you know, like 16 hours of reading into a 2-hour time frame to watch the whole story unfold. Anne Rice knew that that doesn't work very well for movies, so she kind of rewrote the story a bit so it fits neater into a 2-hour movie package. And I think she did a good job. It's really good. So, you know, yeah, they're on October 3rd, I think it is, October 3rd, AMC is releasing a new series called Interview with the Vampire. And it's going to be based off of the first book, although a lot of major changes have been made, as they say, to account for modern audiences. So, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I mean, it most certainly will not be anything like the books. But could it stand on its own? That's what I want to know. Can it stand on its own as a good show? We'll see. We'll see. So, Maloney says, first time I was on Queen Mary was in 1974, and she has the scent of cigar smoke and citrus. It was a beautiful fragrance, and a former crew member mentioned that in a book it was true. That's true. I've heard many stories that when the Queen Mary first opened as a hotel, when you walked in, it smelled like cigars and citrus. I've heard that before. But I think over time, the smell of the cigar smoke kind of dissipated, and now it smells like a library. But it makes sense that Queen Mary smelled of cigar smoke and citrus. And the reason why was because people smoked a lot of cigars aboard the Queen Mary, especially in the smoking rooms. And a lot of the ship was cleaned with citrus-scented things. So, cigar smoke and citrus. So, pretty cool. As Normandy asks, which ship had a better name, Queen Mary or Normandy? Queen Mary. See you later, Daniel. Derpy says, have you ever seen any of the Herbert Davis Richter paintings of Queen Mary's interiors? His painting of the lounge, done during the maiden voyage, is probably my favorite of them. Yes, I've seen them. They are beautiful paintings. I would love to own big posters of those, because they are beautiful paintings. Like, my God. I don't know who would sell them as posters, especially in high quality, you know. But I would love to have them. I would love to have them as posters. Thank you, Peden. See you later. Right2PM says, did Queen Mary ever get struck by lightning whilst at sea? I'm sure she did. I'm sure she did, especially the masts, but I've never heard a story. It's just that you'd think with how many voyages she was on, how many times she's been through storms, she had to have been struck by lightning at least once, you know. But I don't know. I don't know. Spyro says, what is your favorite room on board RMS Queen Mary? The first class main lounge, but my favorite room that no longer exists would be the second class overflow lounge, which was located on A deck. But it no longer exists, and it hasn't since the war. Conrad said, did the cigar store and flower shop occupy the most prominent locations in Piccadilly Circus? If I remember correctly, the cigar shop was on the left side, the flower shop was on the right. But prominent, I mean, they were right there on the corner, so I don't think you could have missed it. Like, if you were going anywhere in that room, you couldn't have missed it, because they were right there on the corners with big advertising and stuff and windows to look into. So, yeah, I don't think you would have been able to miss it. Yeah. Do you know about the Edmund Fitzgerald? No, I've heard the name, but I don't know what it is. Not off the top of my head, at least. My pleasure, Justin. Yeah, there's a lot of rooms that used to exist aboard Queen Mary that I would have loved to see. Many years ago, I want to say 2010, I walked into Queen Mary's first class pool room. I was not a Queen Mary fan back then. I was not even an Ocean Liner fan back then. So walking into that room, I was kind of like, okay. You know, I had no idea the significance of that room. And now that it's closed off, and it has been for years, I'm always like, how come I never appreciate things until it's locked away? Spyro says, Alex, what is your favorite swimming pool, either the first class or second class swimming pool on the RMS Queen Mary? The first class pool just looks loads better to me than the second class pool. Oh yeah, Justin, I agree. A good selling point about Queen Mary is about Art Deco and how there are many indications and influence from that era that are reflected highly in the interior design today around the world. Oh, absolutely. And even different styles of Art Deco are aboard the Queen Mary. British styles. But it's funny because like there was different Art Deco styles. There was American, British, French, European, and like a few others. They had their own distinct look. But then within those were other distinct styles. And Queen Mary shows many distinct styles of Art Deco that were all British. And so, like for instance, a lot of the ship has these wooden interiors. So it was very much a wooden-inspired Art Deco look. But then you go into like the veranda grill, for instance, and there isn't a stick of wood in there. The whole thing is designed in these synthetic materials. I'm not going to say like fully synthetic because they had metal. That's not a synthetic material technically, but it's not a naturalistic material. So you go into like the veranda grill and there's very much like white walls and stainless steel and aluminum, and it's all chromed, and there's glass, and it's like you walk into different rooms aboard the Queen Mary and there's a slightly different style to it, which is just really fascinating when you think about it. Derpy says, just sending this to make sure you don't catch up to the end of the chat. Nothing to see here. SS Normally says, couldn't they use the engine room as storage? I mean, they could, but why would you want to? The engine room looks so cool. I would want to visit it. Edmund Fitzgerald was a lake crater that sunk in the Lake Superior in 1975. Do you know how deep the pool is on RMS Queen Mary? In terms of from bottom to waterline, I think it was 8 feet. Bottom to waterline. But the waterline was very low. I think 4 feet below the surface. Alright, folks, I'm going to end the live stream here. It's been an hour or 2 hours and 9 minutes, and I do have to get going. But thank you guys so much for watching. Ooh, whoa. Thank you guys so much for watching. And I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.